is, but it's upsetting me. I think it's related to gentrification in public space. And being a Black person who has lived in a lot of gentrifying cities, I think it's about who is and who is not allowed to feel okay in public, and who kind of always has to have their guard up when they're in public. A perfect example is myself. I was once locked out of my own apartment, and and my apartment at the time had a way of getting in through a window that was kind of like, we had a way of getting in. And I remember being afraid. I remember thinking like, if someone sees me going into my own apartment, they could call 911. And I was just like, I don't want to deal with that. I don't want to deal with that. And so rather than going into my own building, I just waited and waited and waited and waited and waited for hours until someone came and let me in because I was too afraid. And again, I'm someone who is privileged. I've had situations where I'm sitting on my own stoop and someone who does not even live there will walk by and be like, can you not sit on this stoop? And I'll say, oh, I live in the building, do you? And they're like, no, I live in the neighborhood. And I say, well, I live here. So again, mind your business now.
Yeah.
I think that it's about who is allowed to exist in public spaces. And I just feel that so acutely living in gentrified neighborhoods especially. And it's like no surprise to me that this charcoal grill business happened in Oakland because Oakland is a rapidly gentrifying neighborhood. And I think that, people, if they see Black folks having a good time, turning up, being loud, all of that, can often signal something that's not supposed to happen is happening. And what's also very ironic is that a lot of these neighborhoods are places where Black folks have historically lived. Like in Brooklyn, I lived on the Avenue of the Puerto Ricos. And like when they had the Puerto Rican Day Parade, it was very, very loud and festive. And people would move in and call the police. And it's like, you moved onto the Avenue of the Puerto Ricos on days that are important to Puerto Rican heritage. Of course they're going to be loud. It's like moving to the beach if you don't want to see sand. I do not get it. Like, why are you calling why did you move here? I will never understand it. But I think it's about policing public space.
Yeah.
So let's take a quick break and talk more about why this upsets me so much. I am a gal on the go, and that's why I love Lola. Lola is a female-founded company offering a line of organic. And we're back. Thank you, sponsor. So, Annie, I feel like I've been ranting this whole time. I think that what we need in this situation is just a rethinking of how we deal with interpersonal problems in public. I think we have to train people to not call 911 for every little thing. I think we have to train people that people of color, marginalized people are allowed to exist in public. I think that we need to have a real conversation about what it means and the consequences for calling 911 to report something that's not a violent or an emergency. And I think that this is the time. I think that we are at a critical moment where we've had all of these instances of, they called the police for this, called the police for that. I think we have to have a national dialogue about what this means because something's up. This is not okay.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I think that is a really great idea, Bridget. I think that there is a lot of, I don't know if it's confusion. I think people don't understand what constitutes when they should call. We don't really get properly trained on it. You just know call in an emergency. So maybe having a dialogue of when you do it, here's the consequences of what happens when you do it. Here's all of these other issues that surround it. And I think it could be even expounded upon beyond that because, I'm a very privileged person, but I honestly don't know how to handle the police a lot of times. I've been in situations where I've just had no idea what my rights were. I don't know. So starting with this, yes, I think we should have a conversation. When do you call 911 and what does it mean?
I think that's so, so important. There's actually an activist named Aaron Rose who was sort of doing just that. Aaron actually created a public resource called What to Do Instead of Calling the Police. So in that resource, he writes, so what do you do? When you see harm being done, when you worry for your safety, when you feel your rights are being violated, what do you do instead of calling the police? How do you keep yourself safe without seeking protection from a system whose default is still surveillance and erasure of others? He says, we start by shifting our perspective. We start by learning about the racist history of the police. We start by saying that an alternative to this system should exist. We start by pausing before we dial 911. We start by making is still surveillance, and it's so important. There's actually an activist named Aaron Roves who was sort of doing just that. Aaron actually created a public resource called What to Do Instead of Calling the Police. So in that resource, he writes, so what do? When you see harm being done, when you worry for your safety, when you feel your rights are being violated, what do you do instead of calling the police? How do you keep yourself safe without seeking protection from a system whose default is still surveillance and erasure of others? He says, we start by shifting our perspective. We start by learning about the racist history of the police. We start by saying that an alternative to the system should exist. We start by pausing before we dial 911. We start by making a different choice where we can. We start by getting to know our neighbors and asking them to be part of this process. I think it's a great place to start. I mean, I'm not saying never call 911, but I am saying it's okay to rethink how 911 is how we're using it. And clearly, a lot of people out there are using it incorrectly. For a lot of people, it could be life and death, right? In the instance that I talked about earlier with the father who was walking his son in a stroller, he writes that if it was a different kind of police officer that showed up, that situation could have gone terribly bad for him. We got to be mindful of that. And that's like, it sucks that is on us to have to figure out, but it is. You know, I wish it wasn't the case, but it is. And I think not acknowledging that reality is not doing anybody any favors.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's really easy to just ask yourself before you dial 911. 911, especially like if you have enough time, if it's not that urgent, it's easy to ask yourself, why am I doing this? What else could I do?
Yeah. I mean,
that's such a simple step.
Yeah, what else could I do? I think for so many issues, just taking a beat, taking a breath is important. I feel this in myself because I'm an impulsive person, and I'm trying to teach myself that in situations where I want to act impulsively, what if I just took a minute and thought it through? And I think we could all use a dose of that. You know, and you don't want it to be a split-second choice that you made to call 911 ends with someone dead. And that shouldn't be on you to grapple with, but that's the reality. I mean, look at those stats that we started the show with. That's the reality.
Yeah. I don't know. This to me is so, it doesn't make any sense to me. And I'm personally a person that's terrified of phones. One, I will do anything to avoid talking on the phone.
So things like Seamless and Postmates are probably a godsend for you.
Oh my gosh. I had to call the dentist today, and it was like such a stressful thing. And like calling 911, the times I've done it has been like I'm shaking having to like answer these questions. And for me, it's mostly been reporting car accidents that I saw, especially in the South when snow hits. We have very bad... we have a lot of car accidents. I just can't imagine why you would go to that right away. That we need to move away from that and, have a national conversation.
Even if you're someone who is saying, listen, the reason why I call the police for these situations is because I care about law and order and I want to have a community that is free of crime, free of even low-level crime. I can understand that. But even police officers are complaining. Even police officers are saying, you are making our job more difficult.
Yeah, a police officer started a thread that went viral on Reddit complaining that someone called 911 to report, quote, it was two black males who were jump-starting a car at 9:30 in the morning. That was it. Nothing else. Someone called it in. People. If you're going to be a racist, stereotypical jerk, keep it to yourself. Another said someone called 911 to report someone fishing at a community pond. He continued, once I arrive, I see a middle-aged black man fishing in the pond. He looks over when I pull up and immediately approaches me. He said, let me guess. My racist neighbors called again saying that I didn't live here. A former 911 dispatcher said that lots of people rang in to report a suspicious person, and when asked for clarification as to what was suspicious about the individual, most would mumble, stumble, or even whisper, he or she's black or Muslim looking. This person added, ma'am, it's not illegal to be black or Muslim or Mexican, etc. Usually. really worked.
I mean, when you have law enforcement officials coming up with little ways of telling people, hey, you're being racist by calling 911 right now, that should tell you all you need to know.
It should.
And yeah, if you are interested in making your community safer, wasting the time of law enforcement officials, it does not sound like is the way to do that.
No, I would say that is the opposite of what you should be doing.
I agree. And I want to talk more about some different solutions to how we can sort of tackle this problem together after this quick break. Look, y'all, I love the way my hair straightener makes my hair look, but I hate the damage it causes. That's why